Kevin Williams along with Matt Manley. We are talking baseball. The season has certainly hit the home stretch. Only a handful of teams still left playing meaningful games. A lot of teams have packed the equipment away, but for a host of Shore Conference teams, well, the big games are here. And Matt, let's start, even though it's the furthest away, but of course, yesterday was the semifinals of the Shore Conference baseball tournament, and sort of an unlikely matchup if you want to go seed-wise. You have Toms River North, the defending champion, taking on Central Regional, the number 11 seed. Both those teams winning yesterday. Now they'll play Monday night at First Energy Park for the Shore Conference championship.
Yeah, and that's kind of what the Shore Conference ends up being a lot of times. You have a couple teams that are in the middle of the field, and with so many things going on as far as the state tournament and finishing up the and other things early in the tournament, you do end up getting some higher seeds. But these teams have been pretty good all year. North and Central have pretty much been in the top 10 all year. Central is the 11 seed in this tournament. Toms River North the 8, but I think we've talked about them as a team that's always been among the contenders in the Shore Conference all year, even though they've kind of been stuck in that like 6 to 8 range because of a couple losses they had during the year. But they got cleared out of the state tournament, and they've loaded up with their pitching scheduled to go in this tournament. And yesterday they threw Jared Bellissimo and Brendan Mullins. They can do it again in the final if they want to, and that's tough to beat. And it was tough to beat for yesterday with Monmouth. And then Central, yeah, they've been a surprise in some respects. They've won 2 extra inning games in a row to get there. They beat Toms River East in a 10-inning game on a walk-off. And then yesterday against Wall, A.J. Smith throws a gem. He had a great year last year, 5-0, 1.15 ERA, all Shore season. And then last year he threw his game of the year. It wasn't quite the year he was having last year. It was an okay year, but he had the game of his season, the game of his life. Go 9 innings and pitch a shutout against the number 1 team in the Shore, the number 2 team in the tournament. I mean, that's a game that he'll remember, and it could go down in Central lore if they could win one more game on Monday night. Ironically,
as I read on your story on ShoreSportsNetwork.com, Central's in the finals for the first time since winning it in 1980 under legendary coach Al Kunzman, a team that had Jeff Musselman, Mark Leiter, a loaded team. It's been all those years, almost 4 decades later, for them to even get back into the championship game.
Yeah, and the funny thing about this game is that, Toms River North won the Shore Conference last year, so you have the first Shore Conference champion playing the most recent Shore Conference champion. That's the last time Central won it. Was the first year they did the tournament in 1980, which it's been a while, so you have kind of the new blood versus the old blood, and here's Central.
The one thing both those teams have in common is they're senior laden, loaded with seniors. You at Central had 8 players, counting the DH, and the 8 seniors in the lineup yesterday. And of course, you've mentioned a couple of the Toms River North part of their great senior class.
Yeah, 7 out of 10 guys for Central, because you have the DH and the pitcher.
Right.
So you had 7 out of 10 for Central, and Toms River North is more the core. Like, they have some young guys who are contributors, but when you look at the core, Craig Larson, Jared Bellissimo, Brendan Mullins, Alex Clavel plays center, and Justin Schaff behind the plate. Those are kind of like the 5 core guys who've been part of this run the last few years, and that's the senior group. That's the engine that drives the bus, so to speak, for them. So whatever you see Toms River North doing this year, whether it's the Ocean County Tournament Championship, A South, and then what they're doing now, that's those guys driving the bus right there.
Mariners are always great at the end of the year. They may start slow in April, but in May they're very, very good. But before that, we have a host of games involving teams playing for sectional championships or trying to take that next step. You mentioned Wall, of course, losing in the Shore Conference tournament, having to bounce back tomorrow and hosting Allentown in the Central Jersey Group 3 finals. And sort of Allentown has been the Achilles heel for Shore teams the last couple of years. They beat Toms River South in that game last year. They knocked Jackson Liberty out of the tournament this year, and now they try and go up against Wall, which going into this weekend or this time, he has been your number 1 ranked team in the Shore.
Yeah, they're back to number 1 because they were still playing. The last time we did the rankings, they're still playing in the Shore Conference tournament, which not a lot of high seeds were able to survive. In the Shore Conference tournament, you had 3 of the top 4 seeds lose their first game, and that's why Wall's at the top, and they're playing well in the state tournament. But Wall's got some things to overcome in some ways. They won their first 2 state tournament games 1-0, so they didn't have much offense in that game, but kind of par for the course for them. They've had pitching. Grant Schulman was great last night against Central. He 7 1/3 innings, 11 strikeouts, 5 hits. He was great. He didn't allow a run. So their pitching is fine. They're going to get it, but offensively they've been a little bit they've been a little bit here and there with their bats. They've scored 7 against Howell and 7 against Freehold Township, but other than that, it's been pretty low scoring for them. And they face an Allentown team that's just found a way. I mean, they're all year in Mercer County. You kind of had Nottingham and Hopewell as the teams, but Allentown's always been kind of lurking as a team that can make some noise when we got to this time of year, and here they are. They knocked Jackson Liberty around, took advantage of some mistakes, and got through that game. But they're going to have some pitching lined up. They didn't use anybody for a whole lot of pitches in that game, so they're going to have their pitchers ready to go against Wall, who doesn't have Trey Dombrowski, who's been their horse all year. They don't have him available, but they do have Ryan Napolitano, who he's one of 3 guys who's pitched really well for them. So Wall's got to swing the bats a little bit more, but they're definitely the favorite, but probably not by a lot, given that Allentown's the defending Group 3 champion with some pedigree and some mojo going right now.
Another team that's accustomed to playing in late May or early June is Jackson Memorial. The Jaguars have a home game tomorrow against Shawnee for the South Jersey Group 4 title.
Yeah, but it's been a couple of years for them. The last few years have been down years for Jackson. You're not used to seeing them struggle the way they have the last few years, but they've been young. Their pitching's been kind of a work in progress, and this year everything's kind of come together at the same time. You have this great sophomore class that's now been thrown into the mix and basically makes up half the starting lineup. You have a group of senior pitchers who've done a good job, particularly Nick Sefik, who has been kind of the guy they've leaned on this year, and he'll be available in that game. But you have a collection of pitchers who can get it done for Jackson. But it's a tough game. Shawnee has kind of been the surprise team in that bracket. But it's a surprise team among a lot of surprise teams. You had Vineland get to that game. Jackson pulls that game out, out of the fire, down 7-5 in the 7th inning, and it's one of those games where like you just wait for one of those games, and that kind of propels a team. Because when you win a game like that, you very rarely see a team, go in the tank after. It's just kind of meant to be. So we'll see with Jackson. I mean, but the thing with them is they're set up for like the next 5 years. I mean, the pipeline there is just loaded with talent. But they're pretty hungry right now, and they're 1-1 away. They're undefeated at home, and they're going to be playing at their home park. And playing a number 9, so you've got to figure they're a favorite to win that game. And then once you're this far, anything can happen.
A team that may be considered a surprise. They made a good run in the Shore Conference tournament. Point Borough and the Panthers are playing for a South Jersey title tomorrow in the Group 2 section. They're on the road against Haddonfield.
And like Jackson's maybe a year or two early with all their sophomores, Point Borough is probably, it's actually even younger. They have even fewer seniors that they rely on. It's juniors, it's sophomores. And, Dave Drew going into the year was pretty optimistic. He knew that he had a young team, but they were pretty talented. He liked what he saw out of them. And if you look at the course of this year, they started, I think, 2-3. They won like 8 in a row, and it looked like that 8-game winning streak in the middle of the year was kind of the indicator that you were going to get something out of this team in the next 2 years. Mm-hmm. But maybe not yet. They weren't quite as good as Jackson Liberty yet, and you had Pinelands had their 2 pitchers, and Manchester and Lacey had good years, but Point Borough just kind of crept up to that 2nd place spot in B South, and now to beat CBA in the Shore Conference tournament, they had Toms River North on the ropes and had a chance to win, and then to go beat West Deptford, who looked like the favorite in that section, even though they have some youth too. For Point Borough to make this run now, they definitely arrived a year early, and they have guys who are playing like seniors as sophomores and juniors. They're coming up with big hits, some really big innings from their guys, and they have their pitching lined up for this game. They didn't use anybody for more than 70 pitches, so you have Sam Collins and Nick Guzzi available for that game, and they can kind of throw the kitchen sink at Hadfield, who's hitting snot out of the ball right now. They're scoring runs left and right, so they're going to need those guys to pitch pretty well in that game. 2
other sectional finals in Central Jersey. In Group 4, you have Manalapan at Hunterdon Central, and in Group 2, Raritan at Metuchen. Again, all these games on Friday.
Yeah, and Manalapan is a pretty considerable underdog because of who they're playing. They've had a good year, and they're not to be taken lightly, but Hunterdon Central is the 2-time defending Group 2 champs. They have 2 studs back on the mound, both of whom are available for that game. Joey DeChar is committed to Old Dominion. He's only a junior. He comes from the left side. Then you're going to throw Alex Deegan, who's 6'7", going to Kentucky, all arms and legs, throws 90. He's the one who's probably going to start that game. So Manalapan's going to have their hands full. He's averaging like 13 strikeouts per 7 innings or something like that. So Manalapan's going to have their hands full, but they have their guy Ben Levine on the hill, who's a lefty too, who's had a great year, breakout year. Him and E.J. Melendez have been their top 2 guys. Melendez threw a great game against East Brunswick, and they'll have Levine going, who's probably been their most consistent guy. So Manalapan's got a shot, but it's against a very good team, and they're going to have to be on their game. And then with Raritan, you know, they're number 7 seed in that section, but they were probably always a little better than that. It shouldn't be that surprising that they're there. What's surprising is who they're playing. Governor Livingston has been a top 10 team in the state all year, and they get bounced by Metuchen. And you know, all of a sudden now, if you're Raritan, you got to kind of like your chances going into that game because you're not facing, they use their number 1 to beat Governor Livingston. Right. They can swing it a little bit. Raritan did have to use their number 1 to win the last game against Voorhees, Zach Johnston, but they have a couple guys who can pitch. And now you just kind of throw a couple guys out there who are good pitchers but not aces, and you see where it lands. The only thing with Raritan is kind of like Wall. They haven't really swung the bats great lately. They did score 7 runs in the second round, but they've been kind of a 1, 2, 3 run team for the last couple weeks. So if the bats can wake up a little bit against the Metuchen team that's coming off a huge win, maybe you get a little letdown on their side. Raritan's got a good shot if they can maybe scratch a couple runs across early and get in position there. But I would say that those two are tough games for the Shore team being on the road, especially for Manalapan playing a Hunterdon Central team that's had a great 2-3 year run now, 25 wins this year. They're tough.
So there's 5 sectional finals on Friday. 2 other teams still playing in the non-public tournament, and they're a little bit behind in terms of where they are in the bracket. But certainly Red Bank Catholic and St. Rose are playing. I mean, they're in the winner-go-home round as well.
Yeah, and there are 2 interesting games, 2 kind of opposite type games, because St. Rose, they're playing Gloucester Catholic, who's if they're in non-public B, they're the non-public B favorite pretty much every year.
Yeah.
And they knocked St. Rose out last year in the South non-public B final. So St. Rose will be going down there trying to get some revenge. St. Rose has won some big games this year, and this is the game they've been kind of lining up for. The only thing with them is they used Riley Maypother for 79 pitches last game, which means he can't pitch that game against Gloucester Catholic on Friday, which tomorrow as we sit here today. So they're going to have to get past Gloucester. And Maypother pitched well against Gloucester Catholic last year. He came in relief and did not give up a run against them. So you looking at that schedule, you thought maybe they'd line him up to face them. But even if they were to upset Gloucester Catholic, they'd still have to go play probably Immaculata, who's had a good year. So it's an uphill climb for St. Rose given how good Gloucester Catholic is. They've got some D1 guys and some studs on that team. RBC is interesting. You know, we were kind of looking at the bracket. It's RBC CBA in that sectional semifinal, and CBA got upset by Notre Dame, who's now going to be playing RBC. So given that Notre Dame beat CBA, RBC won't be taking them lightly. But, you know, given that they're playing at home, the year that RBC's had, you know, you might forget about them because they got bounced out of the Shore Conference tournament by Toms River East and Nick DeGennaro. But they're still having a great year. They've got a bunch of juniors. They're set up to do this for 2 years. And if they can win this game, if they can just get by Notre Dame, and that's still an if, but if they can get by Notre Dame, they're going to be playing Bishop Eustace or they're going to be playing St. Augustine, who are the 2 favorites. Whoever wins that game is the de facto favorite. But they're going to be playing one of those 2 teams, and I think it's a great opportunity for them to play one of those in a setting like that because, number one, I think they're good enough to compete in that game if they can get some offense. They haven't really hit the best pitch. When they face good pitching, they've gotten shut down. And if they go play one of those teams, they're going to face a good pitcher, so they're going to have to step up. But if they can do it, this is a really good spot for them because they're set up to do this again next year. So the experience will be great for them if they get a shot. And you know, if you're there, you never know.
You hear him talk about it, he knows all the players. The guy's an encyclopedia. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
7 Shore teams left. Of the 7, who will be the last one standing when the whole season ends within a couple of weeks?
To me, the best bet. Well, the last one standing is tough because I think the best bet to win tomorrow is Jackson because they're playing at home. They're the 3 against the 9. Shawnee used their best pitcher last game. Jackson is the most set up to win tomorrow. But if you're asking me which team has the most staying power, it has to be Wall because of the pitching they have. The only problem with them is they're playing a team like Allentown tomorrow. They don't have their number 1 guy on the mound. Ryan Napolitano's had a really good year, but you can kind of pick a name out of a hat with the pitchers. And one of them, you know, maybe one of them has like kind of a quiet stretch while the others are dominating. You know, that's a tough game to get by for Wall. It might even be a pick 'em, But if Wall gets by that game, they're set up with Dombrowski next week against either Seneca or Cherry Hill West. That'll be an interesting game because Seneca's got a kid, Nick Decker, who's probably going to get drafted. But if you get to that game, Wall's got some clout where they can actually win the whole thing. But if you're asking me who's the most likely to be playing on Tuesday, it's probably Jackson. Out of the public school teams, because RBC's got a good shot to play Tuesday too. But I would say Jackson or more. But if they win, they might have to play Hunter and Central, which is a very tough game too. So complicated answer.
7's a lucky number. Let's see if there's still 7 left standing after tomorrow. Of course, to find out all the action on Friday, you'll follow Matt on shoresportsnetwork.com because nobody does it better. Thanks, Matt.
All right.
Matt Manley, Kevin Williams for shoresportsnetwork.com. Stick with us throughout the baseball season.